Let's start our conversation with the whole subject of intuition by asking for God's presence, for asking to be taken into the stillness that allows us to hear God's whispers. Let's invoke the presence of the Masters now. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, dearest friend, beloved God, Lord Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda. Help us to still our hearts. Help us to still our minds, that we may feel thy presence, that we may go into the silence and listen for your whispers of guidance, of divine blessings and divine love. Om, peace. Amen.
The first page of Paramahansa Yogananda's book, Whispers from Eternity. For years, I missed it. I didn't know it was there. It was hidden. But it's the very first page that he wrote in that wondrous book of answered prayers. And our Guru says, I was deaf, but eternity whispered to me unceasingly. My wisdom's hearing power slowly woke, and I heard the whispers of eternity becoming ever clearer in response to my sacred demands. I asked eternity, what do thy whispers mean? The whispers grew stronger, until at last, quite suddenly, eternity answered. Hear the voice of uninterrupted guidance. I am God's spokesman, eternity. I have whispered to thee through thy slumber of ages, awake! Now thou art awake, and my whispers will never cease from saying, wake all thy brothers. In sleeping minds everywhere, my whispers constantly work. Work thou with me through living eternal whispers, that all may hear his voice. I replied to eternity, I will send whispers to all my sleeping brothers, saying, awake, get ready, come home to his perennial peace. And I will borrow thy voice, eternity, when my earthly voice can be no more heard. Then I will continue to utter through thee. Oh, listen to his all-solacing soul whispers. I will wait for all, uttering to them eternity's whispers, as my countless human brothers, and also beasts and atom sparks, all slowly travel toward their own final freedom, their long train seemingly endless. I will softly say through these whispers from eternity, awake, let us all together go home, following the whispered summons of his ever-calling voice.
So the subject is intuition, and it's a very, very good one. How are we going to be in tune? How are we going to be in tune? We talked a little bit today. A question was asked about attunement. How do we work on our attunement? What little tricks can we have throughout the day to remember God, to feel God's presence, to, adjust ourselves from wherever we've gotten to back into that divine inner communion? So now we move to intuition, which is, we do things to attune ourselves, but really, ultimately, it comes back to the simple part. Prayer is talking to God, as we've heard, and meditation is listening for his answer. So there's a little key there. What is intuition? And it's that place of listening. So how do we listen? How do we hear? There's a lot going on. We've just come from Mumbai, and the ashram is on Mud Island, which is a quieter place, but then you ride the jetty, you go through the little fishing town, and then the noise and the chaos begins of the city and the masses of humanity and the very creative way that India has found to express itself on the highway, which is lots of horns, just sort of, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. In case you didn't see me, I have a horn here. And so the sounds start becoming louder and louder and louder. So how do we tune out all those outer sounds so that we can begin to hear what is promised to us, the inner sounds of meditation? And God doesn't shout, as Yogananda said in this. Yogananda said, when I leave the body, when I'm gone, you no longer see me. Listen to my whispers from eternity. It will guide you. And he left us a book with all these wonderful prayers and poems that he called Whispers from Eternity. And in that book, he said there is an answer to every problem that the devotee can ever have. So that's kind of interesting. I've played with that myself. I'm having a problem. I need to learn this, that, or the other. I need to adjust something. I need to know. I go into the Whispers from Eternity. He promised he has all the answers there. So yes, the answers are there. And the answers are in the deep inner stillness of meditation when we can get that quiet. But we have to learn to listen. We have to be able to listen. I remember Bharat. I don't know how many of you have heard of Joseph Cornell, who does the sharing nature. He also did a book on Om, which is one of our great techniques of listening, right? And he was my Om teacher, my particular Om teacher. He and his wife Ananda were the mom and dad of the Postulant Living Discipleship Program when I was taking it. And Bharat would be off doing his writing, and Ananda would be with us day after day. And then lo, sort of as if from the on high, Bharat descended to teach the Om class. And we were all quite keen to learn this from him, because what he did, he wrote his books, he said. He had a very simple technique. He went into his little tiny meditation kutir, which he always had. He actually packs it up and puts it back together again wherever he lives, several places now. And it's just his meditation kutir. It's a little away from the house. So he walks out of the house over to his quiet little cave, kutir, and he starts writing his book, whatever he's working on. So he gets his own board out. He starts listening to the inner sound. Wait till he has that connection, then closes his eyes and writes for a while, then goes back, closes his eyes and writes. So he lives with Om regularly. And he wrote a book about his love for Om. And he came to teach us. This was before the book, but he came to teach us in the meditation temple of the seclusion retreat, which is very quiet in nature. There's no sound out there, and there isn't even electricity. They have some solar power now, but very, very, very quiet out nature. So he comes into this very quiet, still temple, and he proceeds to teach us all the Om technique. And he had a gift for it, and we all benefited by his gift by being able to tune in more directly. And I thought everybody should be able to have the Om technique. Everybody should be able to have listening for Om. And it's a part of our, there's step-by-step meditation 1, 2, discipleship Om, it goes along like that. And I thought, let's see, how could I bring it into the first class I ever teach, meditation 1? Maybe there's a way. I'll go get some of those big conscious like that one right there. And I'll say, now we're just going to listen to the sound and concentrate on the sound that you hear in your right ear while you've got the conch up there. As a child, I had learned this. We went to the beach, and it was our family vacation every year. And we would get a shell, and somebody had the idea or had learned it. Listen to the shell. We'd put it up to our ear, and there'd be this expansive sound. I remembered that. I said, that's a lot like Om. So maybe I could sneak in some of those and teach people, well, I didn't change the whole movement of the Ananda's work. And when we teach certain things, listening to Om is a wonderful way to practice being in tune with God, because what is Om? It's Divine Mother's vibration in all of creation. And if we can hear it and attune ourselves to it, we can be in harmony with the flow of God's presence in the world, in our lives. So listening is such a key. Biraj was, he has had a practice. He'll probably tell you about it before he does the exercise. But over the years, he's done as part of his meditation, not at the end, but somewhere in there when he's quiet and still, he'll ask something of Divine Mother for guidance. He'll say, Divine Mother, what do you want me to learn today? And he asks the same questions every single time. So over 40 years, he had a lot of, not every day, but many times a month, taking down what he heard, what he could hear of, her guidance as best as he could. He listened and just captured it in his little journal. So anyway, he chose a number of these to make a book of. And I went through and found a lot of the quotes about intuition, because it's a subject that Swamiji and Yogananda thought was very important. They mentioned, use your intuition, learn how to use your intuition so that you can hear God's will for you. You can make the right decisions. It's, the Guru, many of us think, oh, if I could only have lived with Yogananda, wouldn't that have been wonderful to be like Swamiji living in the ashram? And he could correct me if I went wrong, and he could, encourage me, and he could inspire me. Wouldn't that have been wonderful? Many people mention that to Swami Kriyananda. Oh, if only we could have been with Yogananda. We were thinking we could grow spiritually faster. It would have been so blissful. It would have been so wonderful. Swamiji said, it wasn't so easy living around Yogananda. And if you think he was going to spend a whole lot of time explaining things to you, you're going wrong this way, you ought to try this, let's sit for a long counseling session, you can tell me all your problems and I'll tell you all the solutions, none of that around Yogananda. What did he do? He would look at the disciple with a certain look in his eye, and it was for the disciple to discern, tune in, what does he mean by that? And take that home and work with that and check him again and see how he was and meditate. He said, I want you to go inside to find the answers. I'm not going to tell you all the answers. He was there, of course. He was guiding them. He said at the end of every day at night, he went into the soul of every one of his disciples to see how that was going, how they were doing, in their soul. And he made the joke. And I tell you, sometimes what I find is very, disturbing, very difficult. We think that, the Guru's doing that for us. He's going into our souls and seeing what it is we need to work on. So how do we know if we're in tune? And how do we get in tune if we're not? One of the ways to know if you're in tune is that you feel God's presence, you feel in harmony, you don't have an upset in your heart, your emotions are not fluctuating. You can be calm and still. And Swamiji mentioned 3 things to know if the intuition that you're getting in your meditation is true or not. One was calmness. That was the first one. That anytime you're emotional, I need an answer. The big questions in life, should I marry this person? Should I take that job? Should I buy this house? There's often a lot of energy, a lot of things resting on the decisions that we make. What school should my child go through? Some of these are the big decisions. How do we know? And the advice is basically always the same. You get still, you get quiet. Maybe you do some meditation practices, whatever you have, Kriya, Hong Sa. You go into the stillness. Why not? If you can let the breath go, whatever you can let go, and into the deeper stillness, go there. And then he recommends just offer the question up to the point between the eyebrows. This is the place, the seat of superconsciousness, the connection with the divine happens here. So as our energy comes up, all of our practices are leading us there. So here's just another example. But once you reach there, once you are there and feeling that connection, that's the time to kind of float the question up. Okay, God, what's better? This job or that job? And then to listen. And also a couple of other things it takes. Patience, because it doesn't always come just like that. We think, as soon as I ask, there's going to be gold letters in the sky and I'm going to hear the answer, or, a sign is going to be given low, whatever that sign is, a bird flies by or a butterfly lands on or whatever it is that we're really wanting an answer right away. And sometimes it might come that way, but more often than not, I found it doesn't necessarily come right away, because I still have things riding on the decision, and it's just hard for me to be totally neutral about hearing God's will. Because once I hear God's will, I've been asking for it, well, it kind of behooves me to follow it. Am I going to be ready to follow it? So that's where it takes also courage. So calmness, clarity is another word he uses. It has to sort of settle. It has to also have a level of practicality, might be too earthy a word, but it has to ring true, not just in the imagination of wouldn't it be lovely if, but does this seem like it's possible? Does this feel true for me? Is this something that Yogananda might have said to me? Is this something that Swamiji might have said to me? Is this something that if I read the scriptures, I might be able to glean this? So we sort of still need to check it a little bit to get that clarity sometimes. And sometimes it just comes. Jesus Christ said, be still and know. Be still and know. And sometimes you just do. You've been wrestling with something and then you get quiet and you get still. That's the answer. And there's a knowingness that nothing can sway you because you just feel it. Other times you're asking the question and you're asking the question and you keep asking the question. And how do we coax an answer from the divine? Well, Yogananda in classic style put more energy into it. Ask for it in a powerful way. Do it as a prayer demand. Swami Kriyananda used to say, when I'm doing a lecture, sometimes I won't know what to say next. He said, but that's all right. I have trust in my guru and a lot of experience by then. But he said, so I would just say, so the most important point is, he said, and I would trust that God would tell me what that most important point was by the time I reached the end of the sentence. Now that's pretty good attunement. But also it's faith, believing that you will get the answer. We often put many obstacles in the way. Oh, this is such a tough question. I just don't know. I'll ask all my friends. I'll write all the pros and cons. I'll do every rational thing, but I don't know. I'm probably not going to get an answer. We have ways that we sort of stop the process. But to really just be open, calmness, clarity, and what's the third one? Do you remember? I might have to look it up. Calmness, clarity, joy, peace. Yeah. Well, let's see if I actually can find it.
Think you're gonna have to intuit it.
Well, I want to get this one right, so might be the first one he gives. Well, I won't take longer because it's not popping out. So here we go. Here it is. Joy was the last one. I guessed right. First of all, to recognize the kind of feeling that indicates true guidance, look for three qualities: calmness, clarity, and joy. If it makes you feel emotionally excited, then it probably only reflects the temporary happiness that comes when our desires are fulfilled. True guidance should have a joy that takes you inside rather than outside of yourself. So that's a particular kind of joy, isn't it? Takes us inside. Ah, yeah, that feels right. Check it inside. Another way to check it is we have the benefit of living in spiritual community, and we have mentors and teachers, acharyas, we have friends. Having somebody who's outside of the situation hear it can be good feedback, because they won't be having the same temptations for likes and dislikes to get involved as much. Here's a good quote that Swamiji had. Don't think of tuning into intuition as receiving answers from some prophetic voice from on high, but rather as listening sensitively to the whispers of your own higher self. So that's where, we bring our energy up. This is where our higher self, the chakra where the higher self is accessible and resonating. And then we keep floating it. What is the answer? And sometimes then after we've done some work there, it'll come in a dream, just like that. You'll just know, or you'll be walking or cleaning the house or driving or something, just in a neutral place, sort of. And then, that's the answer. But he always encouraged us to keep at it. This is a really good one from Yogananda. You can find God in the solitude of your own room when in the early morning hours and before sleeping, you compose yourself for meditation. With folded hands, say mentally, Father, thou art omniscient. Thou knowest my every thought. Talk to me. I want to hear thy voice. Say it mentally again and again until you feel it. You have to culture this feeling, to work for it. Repeat the prayer again and again until you find that your heart throbs with love and yearning for God, and you get a conscious response. So he gives us a little map here about a technique about how do you draw that response. Excuse me. You mentally repeat your prayer with more energy. You let your heart throb with love and yearning for God. I love Yogananda's phrasings. Swami Kriyananda was given the job to edit by Yogananda. He said, I want you to edit. So, of course, he did. And he would edit it with such clarity and for the modern age and the Western age, and he would have it. But sometimes I like to just go back to some of Yogananda's original writings, because he'll talk about his love for God, and he'll string about 6 adjectives or adverbs just in this sentence of just, by the unctuous fervor of my devotion, I will ceaselessly call to thee with, he just goes on, and you just get caught up in this, he wants God to come, and he's just showing us what it's like to love God so much that God cannot refuse to come to us. Because as again, the naturalist, was it Barat or John Muir? If you love, this is about being in nature. Maybe George Washington Carver, who had the job of, George Washington Carver is a great guy. He was a very spiritual man. He was Black, living in the South before, when there was horrible discrimination against Black people, and very south of the US. And so he was very spiritual, very religious. So he said, God, can you show me the mysteries of your universe? Some question like that. Can you reveal to me, you're the wonder of, and the answer he got back from, well, George, that's a pretty big question. How about if you ask me a smaller question? Okay, God, well, can you tell me what my human potential is for realizing, and George, your question's still too big. So George lived in the South, and there were few crops that grew. He said, well, God, let's see. Can you tell me what could be ways that the peanut could help the world? And then it became his life work of working with the peanut. He uplifted the town and his fellow Black people by finding all of these businesses in different ways that you could have peanut butter, peanut oil, peanut this, peanut that. And he made a great success of his life. He heard it. He listened, he heard. He started big. And many times we do. We start big, Show me yourself in your grand, give me one of those. What's it called when you get the vision? Vishwarupa. Vishwarupa. Give me one of those Vishwarupas. I want to see God everywhere. I want to feel that bliss and that total expansion. And God says, maybe that's a little bit too big of a question right now. And then we say, well, what do you want me to do for the rest of my life? Well, at the moment, maybe that's too big a question. Well, what shall I make for dinner? And then maybe we get the guidance that we need. So, we have to be willing, to take it where it comes. But the big questions also will be answered when we call to God, because what is yoga? It's union. And what is union? It's love, two things coming together. And so if our soul comes together with God, there's union, there's yoga, there's love. And in that union, how could God keep a secret from us? How could we keep a secret from God? We become in that place of oneness. And then God's answers are our answers. We'll know, we will know. And not to be discouraged, keep asking, as Yogananda says. You have to work for it. Another one I might share. This is another one. Again, this is from Swami Kriyananda now. Don't wait for some sort of pronouncement or expect a vision or voice from the clouds, but have the courage to act. By not acting, we often close the door to real guidance, whereas in the process of acting, the energy begins to flow more clearly. So Swamiji used to say of energy, we do the energization, we learn about energy and magnetism. We have enough energy flowing, the magnetism builds, we can draw to us anything we need, including God's response. We can draw to us money, opportunities. We become a divine magnet. Anything God wants us to have, it comes to us when we let that energy flow fully. That magnetic field is developed. But, that flow of energy, sometimes, some of us are a little cautious. We don't want to make a big step or make a big decision that might be wrong. So we just say, well, I think I'll just wait until I'm sure. I'll just wait a while. I'll keep asking. And sometimes it comes and sometimes it doesn't. And we start to kind of get distracted and think, well, maybe it's not time for this. And then we go off and maybe we've missed an opportunity to actually have some real guidance, some real change in our life, some real opportunity could pass us by. So Swami Kriyananda and Yogananda recommended so much that we use the dynamic power of our will on the spiritual path. also an intuition to have the courage to act. He said that energy, when the energy's flowing, and sometimes you have to take that first step to make the energy flow. Let me try this out. I'm thinking to open a new business, or I'm thinking to start a new project. Well, maybe it's not time, it's too hard, then it's finished. The subject goes away and comes back or doesn't. Let me try to put a little energy out. Let me just take the first littlest step and see what happens. It's kind of an adventure. It's a cooperative effort with God that we're doing. We put out a little energy, we put out energy, and then the energy has its own intelligence, Swamiji said. Energy has its own intelligence. And I didn't used to think of energy as having intelligence, but one of the 8 aspects of God is energy. So if we're really tuning into energy, we're letting that energy flow through, then there's that possibility of attuning. Sure, I will. I'll finish with this. Swamiji says in Intuition for Starters, he wrote a book on intuition with different practical.
Basically, everything that we've been talking about so far today is in here.
Why it's important. And some of the quotes are from elsewhere, but many of them are from there. This one is, to receive inner guidance, concentrate at the Agya chakra, the point between the eyebrows, which is the sending station for our thoughts. Now ask for guidance from the superconsciousness. You can send out a strong thought like, what shall I do? Then after that comes listening, receptivity. So it says in the Bible, to as many as received him, to him gave he the power to become. So as many as receive the guidance, to him will God give the guidance. So we have to be really willing to receive, wanting to receive. And so we may have time for just one brief one. In Autobiography of a Yogi, Yogananda says, intuition is soul guidance, appearing naturally in man during those instants when his mind is calm. Nearly everyone has had the experience of an explicitly correct hunch. So it's not this great mysterious thing that we have to do a whole lot of things. We've all kind of lived through, I think that might be right. I think that person is a good one for this. We've already had these little inklings. And to access it more consciously, we can have them more often. And now that you're meditators, having this as part of your practice can increase your, Yogananda used to say, people would grow so much more spiritually, but for lack of spiritual adventurousness. So the other side of that is be spiritually adventurous, Don't be afraid to ask, put out some energy to try it out and see. God can give us much more than we can imagine. And so it's worth being a partner in that.
Thank you, sweetie. So that's what we're trying to do. That's what listening deeply for the intuition of God's will is all about. Now, what we'd like to do for the second half of this evening's class is we're going to have a change of pace here. We're going to start with a very brief experiential activity that comes from that author Bharat Joseph Cornell that Lahiri referred to. It's one of the activities in his book called Sharing Nature with Children. But it works just as well for us, big children. And what to do this, I'm going to ask that for the next 3 or 4 minutes, we're going to turn off the AC. we're going to turn off the as many of the big lights as the camera will let us turn off. And those of you that are at home, try to extinguish some of the sounds in your room and throw your windows open. And that's the next thing we're going to do. We're going to throw the windows open so we can do Joseph Cornell's game activity of listening to the sounds of nature. And it's true that at least where we are in Pune right now, the one of the biggest sounds you're going to hear is going to be hammering and clanging of construction. But that's all right, because all we're going to do in the next 3 or 4 minutes is see how many different sounds we're able to tune into. So the hammering is just one sound, and the car honkings is another sound. And what Bharat would have us do is in these next 3 or 4 minutes, we're just going to use the fingers of our hands. Use the fingers of our hands and place them on our thighs. You can do this at home too, and just place them at your thighs and start from the leftmost finger on your thighs, and let your eyes close now and just listen. And each time you hear a new sound that you hadn't heard before, let the first finger on the left side tap your thigh. And then when you hear the next new sound that you hadn't heard before, tap with the next finger. And to just keep going and see how many of your fingers back and forth. You can count the number of new and different sounds as you listen more and more deeply to what's around us outside. All right, I'll be quiet. See how many sounds you can tune into. How many different sounds. Okay. Take a nice deep breath. Open your eyes. How many of you got beyond 10 fingers? Just raise your hand. Okay. Tell me, did anyone get beyond 15 fingers? 1, 5, 5, 5. Anyone get? Okay. What were some of the sounds you heard? Who can call out the first one that you heard? Doesn't matter. Who? Anyone? Babies crying. What else? Hammering. What else? The cough. Yes. The whizzing of a scooter. Monkeys. I wasn't sure it was a monkey. That's a good idea. What else do we hear? Birds. Different couple of different kinds of birds, at least. Squirrel. You heard a squirrel? Wow. What did you? Yeah, machines are kind of whirling, wasn't it? All these different things going on at the same time. And in those 2 or 3 minutes, all those unique sounds were going on. Normally, we just kind of kind of ignore them. And it's a good thing to ignore sometimes. But when you really start tuning in more and more subtly, you realize there's lots out there. There's lots of different things going on. Now, they're not always just out there, but that's a good place to start to refine and make your hearing more subtle. So let's go ahead and pull those doors closed and turn back on the AC. And if we need more light, if the camera needs more light, we can do that. So now it's time to hand out thank you so much for getting those for us. If everyone can take a pen and two pieces of paper, and I'm going to look for a helper. Who's that? Tejas? Tejas. How do you say it actually? Tejas. Tejas, would you do me a favor? Sure. Would you walk through the curtain and turn right into Jyotish and Devi's office and bring out about 20 books? That'd be great. All right. And be sure your pen works. On something that, other than your Dupata, something that will be safe to try it out on. If you get your piece of paper, you're all set. Once you get your paper, and if you're at home, see if you can get something to write on too. On the shelf, yeah, just 18 or 20 of them. Maybe he needs a helper. Would you mind going back and just helping him carry? Yeah. And when you get your paper, would you do this for me? Once it starts big, but just fold the two together in half like this. And they'll end up with a little tiny booklet of about 8 pages. This is just about the same size as the journal that I write on. When it's folded together like this, about the same size of my journal that I often write on in many mornings. And so we're going to have our own little personal journal today to use another couple of techniques that might kind of jumpstart the whole process of listening even more deeply than we might have before. Great. And if you can just pass out a book to everyone here, and if you could then use the back of the book, not the front cover, and we'll use these as kind of a hard surface to write on. So be sure to turn it over so we're only writing on the back cover. And no fair reading the whole book this afternoon. We don't have time for that. But back cover, so we don't end up making any marks on the front covers. Protecting Jyotish and Devi's books. Okay. All right. Lahiri, if you and I can move to the sides, it'll be helpful here. So, here. The next activity to help jumpstart this whole process of deep listening to our own inner guidance, our own inner attunement with intuition. I'd like you to try a first little, just getting used to using your pen and paper to help the listening process. To do this, I want you to write at the very top of your page. I want you to just say, dear, like you're starting a letter, dear, and then I want you to choose one of the people, of these 6 or 7 personages across the, as in America, sometimes irreverently, people will say, you mean the boys on the bench? On the altar here. Choose any one of the 7 that you feel drawn to, and just say dear and add their name after that. Just at the top of this letter we're going to write to ourselves. And then all I want you to do for these next 5 minutes or so is and it's just nobody's going to see this, so it's just between you. You're gonna watch what one of these esteemed personages might say to you if you were to ask them, "What do you want me to know? What would be good for me to know right now about myself or my life?" And so, dear so-and-so, what do you want me to know? What would be useful for me to know right now? And then I want you to use your pen and start writing down, what do you think they might say to answer that question? What might they tell you if you could hear them? All right. Make sense? Just what would they say to the question, what would you like me to know more about right now, about my life or myself? And we'll do 4 or 5 minutes. Let's just see. You could fill one whole page. You can turn the page over. You can go a little more on the other page, whatever comes. But one thing not to do, don't just sit there and stare at the paper. Just start writing, because you get to make it up. It's okay. For now, we just want to get your pen moving. Right? What might they say to you if they could answer? Off you go. This is them talking to you. What would they say? You just get to write it down, what they would say. Doesn't have to be neat. No one else has to even be able to read it. You just write down what they would say to you. What would be good for you to know more about right now. Let's take about 30 more seconds. See how much more wants to be added. Okay, be adding the last little bit from this first activity. Okay. Let's go ahead and put your pens down for a minute, and I'm just curious. How many people chose Swami Sri Yukteswar to help them write? Oh, so we've got some brave people over here. Ooh, 3. Anybody choose Babaji? Okay. Okay. All right. And how many chose Yogananda? Ooh, lots. Anyone choose Swami? Good. All right. So, is there anyone? I know I told you that what you wrote is between you and the saint of your choice, and I fibbed a little bit, because if there's anybody who especially enjoyed what came through onto their paper, if anyone wants to share that, this we could take a minute for that. Anyone want to? Would you like to? Sure. Be sure to speak up so that people at home can hear them too. Maybe we should turn this.
Well, let's actually take it off the hook so we can pass.
Can we do that?
This
Good.
part? Yeah, just this.
Yeah, you have.
Yes. In the meantime, we'll get started with
Sure,
this. Shubhangi or Agay?
Shubhangi. Yeah.
What came through on your letter? Who were you writing to first?
Paramans Yogananda ji. Yeah.
Keep it writing to you. Okay.
Yeah. So what came through is meditate for more time. Okay. And read more spiritual books. Actually, I've been reading God Talks to Arjuna by Paramans Yogananda ji, but it's not like on a regular basis. So I think I need to follow that regularity in reading it every day, particular thing. Yeah, and also increase the Kriya practice gradually. I'm just doing the basic Kriyas, okay? And also to increase devotion through prayers and chanting. so that you can go more into silence and sit for more time by that in meditation, and also get into more attunement with God.
Any other creative shows you want to hear? Hey, Dan. What came through on your letter?
That doesn't have amplification, but the online audience will be very.
Okay.
I got two things. First one was like act with your intuition without repetition, and second,
Sorry?
act with your intuition without any second thought,
Uh-huh.
and keep trusting God.
Ah.
You wrote to master? You were like
I
master.
wrote to-
To whom?
to Swami.
Oh, Sri Woo. Yeah, these are very people in their spine who are willing to write this Yukta Shorty. And anyone else want to try? Okay, we got one over there. What's your good name? Vasu. Thank you, Vasu. What came through on your letter?
So I started with Dear Yogananda ji, what do you want to know about my life and myself? And what I could hear from within myself was exchange the levels of your thought involvement with work and work with thoughtlessness. Because you have thought enough.
Mm.
Now you need to feel and test the depths of being in the states of where these actions take you to wake you up with newness.
Can you say that sentence one more time? Just the last sentence.
Now you need to feel and test the depths of being in the states where these actions take you
Uh-huh.
to wake you up with newness. I need you to forgive yourself for what you feel loaded, and others with the help of motherly energy.
Mm. Mhm. Anybody else? We got time for one more. Who wants to be the one? Huh? Okay. Speak up nice and loud because that's not amplifying you. Okay.
Take your baby steps and keep walking the new path. You'll meet many in your journey, but the right one will lift you and keep you on this path. Love him and tune your consciousness to him. Feel what you find is inner joy, and that's all that is trying to do. Doors will open to what truly your soul desires.
Aren't these beautiful? I mean, it's a silly little exercise. It's not much more than the children's games of tapping your thighs, but things happen. Things come through. I can't explain it. There must be some physics to it that is beyond me. But time and time again, Lahiri and I do this workshop of one form or another, and these things keep coming out.
Ask him, you shall receive your word.
Maybe there's some truth to that. Okay, let's take one more step in this, and I want you to turn your little personal journal to a new page, a nice clean page. Hope you have something you're writing on at home. And by the way, can the people at home can they speak in a way we can hear them on?
Yes.
They can. Okay, so the next time we'll see if some of you at home want to share what you write, what comes through to you. Yes. It isn't working for the people at home. So only this one. Okay, we'll just pass this one around. Sorry about that. All right, this one is this is the last of these kind of deep listening activities for this afternoon. And it's one that Lahiri kind of let the cat out of the bag, if you will, because what I'd like you to try, just as a way to see if it works for you, is the thing that I've been doing for 40 years since it was actually the very first month I stepped foot on Ananda village in Nevada City, California, this activity started for me, and I filled what 43 journals of these little things, just this little exercise that you're about to do. And most of that time, it's just been exactly what she said. I just start a letter. In my case, I happened to, because I don't really know why it started this way, other than Paramahansa Yogananda always talked about his love for Divine Mother. So somehow in my very early habitual way, I just started writing at the top of a blank piece of paper in my journal. Each morning or afternoon, whenever I do this, I just wrote down, "Dear Divine Ma," and I just kind of shortened it, kind of familiar. So you can use that on your next letter, or you can choose an appellation of your own, whoever you want to write this letter from, if you will. It'll be who this letter is coming from. But for me, I write, "Dear Divine Mom." And then the next thing I do is I write these letters. W, D, Y, W, M, T, L, T. Sure, you can't see that, but can anyone kind of guess what those letters might mean? You heard it from Lahiri earlier, if you remember, but it's just the abbreviations for, what do you want me to learn today? And I found if I just started the morning's letter that way, something always seemed to happen. Why don't you give it a try? Anyway, let me make it bigger for you. There's that little acronym, little quickie things. You guys, Indian corporations love little strings of letters to tell them, what the company name is. So that's all it is. If that feels good to you, start your letter in that. Address it to anyone you feel comfortable addressing it to, and we'll spend another 5 or 6 minutes just seeing what comes through in the next letter. The deep listening to help you tune into your inner intuition. Good luck. What do you want me to learn today? Take another minute or two. See what else wants to go onto your writing.
Mic is working.
Yeah.
The one is working. Yeah.
Okay. Put your last little bit on the end of your writing, and we've got a few minutes to hear a few. Anyone who wants to, who happens to feel to share, we can do that.
She's saying, maintain your calmness, make it joyful, not down pulling. Take it to stillness, absolute stillness. I am there waiting for you. I want to meet you. Make some efforts of effortlessness.
Who else? Okay, we've got another. Oh, yeah. Okay, there's one.
Do chanting for 5 minutes. Stay calm and believe on your own consciousness. I'm in your consciousness. I'm sitting in a spiritual eye. I'm here to help you, my child. You are my favorite child.
How about online? Is there anyone who can either write or tell us their? Can we hear them if they speak? Anyone want to give it a shot from online? Okay, we'll shout out in a minute if you have the courage to do it. Anyone else here in the room who's wants to give it a shot? Anyone at all? Yes, Ritu, good. And was there someone after Ritu? Okay,
So,
good.
hello.
Hi.
I asked to Lahiri Maharshal. So,
Yes, but be sure to speak up so all can hear.
yes. So he said, keep working hard on yourself, keep learning. Keep learning. You will find peace within yourself
Keep
by closing your eyes and listening to you. Calmness and stillness will give you joy. Keep seeking for truth.
Hello. Yes. So today, I asked to Divine Ma what I have to do more. So be attuned with gurus more and more, practice of Kriya, and serve more.
What was the last phrase?
Serve more.
Serve more. Anyone yet online willing to courageously speak out? You can if you want. Okay, one more up here in front.
So hello. So actually, I asked Divine Mother what should I learn today, and I don't know why this response came, but
None of us do. We have no idea why they come.
it said like I would like you to learn about fickleness of human relationships. And I would like you to learn that sooner or later, everyone is bound to disappoint you in one way or other. So it was not like very good, but
Sometimes Divine Mother is tough on us. It's true.
and it said like, stop trying to please everyone and like, don't try to be over friendly or be too good to everyone just to please everyone. Get absorbed in yourself and not bother much about the world.
Wow.
Like that.
Let's open it up just now for what do you make of all this? I mean, we've all heard 15, maybe 18 different letters that have come through on a silly little exercise. As I say, I started this silly little exercise myself 40 years ago. What do you make of what you're hearing? What are your impressions?
We need to ask. How can we keep going without stopping to ask ourselves, others, and least of all, sometimes God?
Yeah, we have to have the courage to ask, and look at what comes through. I mean, it almost feels like, well, I don't know. It's a magical kind of thing. It's like you just kind of put the pen to the paper and look at what's coming out. There's so much wisdom in each of us. Did you know there was that much wisdom inside of you? I don't. Every morning I sit down, I say, this is not me. I don't know this stuff. I do not know. I'm not this wise. But something is. What other impressions that you're having from what you're seeing and hearing today?
I was thinking like after writing some few lines, I stop and think whether is it figment of my own.
I know. It's a good question. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Sometimes early on, I would just write garbage, and it was just subconscious junk. And then I would, after a month or two of a lot of that happening, I would realize, oh, this is just junk. And every once in a while, something else comes through. Let me wait. Let me stop and wait for that other level to come through. And then increasingly, I was able to tell the difference between the junk. And I don't mean the finger wagging, because I get a lot of that from whatever the source is, just like you did. I get a lot of corrections. It would be better if, so there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just if it's just crazy sounding stuff, or just tearing you down, or making you feel just horrible about yourself, then that's a different voice. So it's okay to kind of say, I'm going to wait to hear another voice, because there are many voices in there, and you don't need to follow the one that's leading you into wild and crazy stuff. But if it sounds wise, if it sounds like all the scriptures you've ever heard, if it sounds like, yes, my guru might actually say that to me, then I find that's worth paying attention to. Who else? What does this mean to you? What do you feel as you hear these things?
I think as human beings, we reach out to every avenue, like friends, to seek answers to our anxiety or our questions. We seldom go to God or our.
Isn't it true? Too often, too seldom.
It is going to be like your first option that you have to exercise, and just speak out your mind and just wait for that answer to come.
It's what the great ones have been doing for centuries.
I think when I started on this path and I practiced this, I've seen a difference. Earlier, something which I used to treat like a sixth sense or an intuition. Now I actually feel that if I want to keep more focus on it, it comes to you in a very distinct and subtle way. And when you think on that thought for a long time, you actually get all your answers.
And it's not up here we get our answers. It's gotta penetrate down here, because we can think ourselves into a lot of delusion. But when we feel, and when it's in our very core of our being, and when something comes in that is true wisdom, true guidance, no one will ever be able to talk you out of that didn't happen, because you know. How do you tell? Yeah, that's what we were just saying, that at first, early on, it's hard to tell. And sometimes you're going to write stuff that you go, oh, that doesn't feel like me. And you're going to have other times that you're going to say, oh, well, that's silly. And you're going to have other times you're going to say, ooh, that makes a lot of sense, but it isn't what I want to do. And all these different levels are going to happen simultaneously for a while. And unfortunately, if we use this too much, or if we say, but I know what I want, Master says that's ego. That's a part we all have. And we all have learned to develop that. And society has taught us to really, get clear on what your ego wants and what it doesn't want. And be sure you don't get swayed from our desires in life. But Master says that's not the highest guidance. That's merely ego speaking. And there's nothing wrong with knowing your wants and dislikes. But there's a wiser part of you that now you've been experienced for yourself. Ooh, there's another part of me beyond my wants and my dislikes, that I could also listen to that. Where would that take me in my life if I really were to not only listen to it, but even follow it. Now, the following it is even harder. That's the PhD course of intuition. But we wanted to give you today just a taste of, there's something in there inside of each and every one of us that can give us direction, that can give us wisdom wiser than we're used to having. And you can call it guru, you can call it Divine Mother, you can call it Christ, you can call it God, you can call it Allah. Frankly, they don't care what we call it. They only care, are we listening for it? And that's why, yes, the Om technique is so powerful as a method of starting to really listen deeply. The little silly games that Joseph Barat Cornell teaches are just a way to remind you, if you listen sensitively, there's something inside you that you might have been ignoring, and you don't need to. Once you know it's there, you have the power every day, as Yogananda writes in the Whispers from Eternity. He says, this is accessible to all of us. So let me close with this last quote. This is something that Swami Kriyananda, our dear friend, wrote. Where did I put it? Here it is. He wrote this years ago, and I take this as a promise in my life. And I'll end with this. My own experience, Swamiji says, convinces me that the divine is accessible to any of us. That's what the saints and sages of all religions have always been trying to communicate to us. Not that they were special, but that we all can be so blessed if we completely let down our mental barriers. Don't let discouragement get the better of you. Don't give up. If you truly make a sincere, sustained effort to reach out and connect, the divine wants to meet us halfway. Think of that. The divine wants to meet us halfway. The divine is only waiting for you to, and here he quotes from that lovely ceremony that many of you participate in often. The divine is only waiting for you to open your heart to me, and I will enter and take charge of your life. That's our dear Swamiji reminding us, keep listening, and see how much of what you hear you can actually follow. Jai Guru.